critical is why we carried out this systems examination. One, we have noted in a number of Auditor General's reports issues of, for example, procurement irregularities, stalled projects, and pending bills that attracted a bit of attention. Two, there are also a number of reports that have come to the EACC on procurement-related corruption, and these are all been captured in the report. We also took note of the Justice Maraga report, especially issues in areas related to human resource management. And of course, there are also the Mandela rules, and today we commemorate the Nelson Mandela Rules Day, which was adopted by the UN in 2015. And I believe the PS and the prison service will speak to that quite a bit. So we also took note of those rules and how we are domesticated them and how we are applying them as a state party to those particular rules. So therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the objectives of the systems review were to examine the systems, policies, and procedures of work at the Kenya Prison Service, to identify weaknesses, loopholes of corruption, and unethical practices. We also sought to assess compliance with the laws, policies, and regulations that govern operations at KPS. We were also to provide appropriate measures to address the weaknesses that we identified and plug the loopholes and gaps that are there, and also to see how we can institutionalize sound governance systems within the KPS. So those are the objectives that guided this particular systems review. We conducted interviews with key staff members, both at the headquarters and in the regions. We reviewed operational processes, policies, and controls. We mapped out areas of potential vulnerabilities. We also undertook site visits on various projects and gathered relevant data and feedback from various stakeholders that also support the work you do or benefit from the work that you do. In terms of scope and coverage, we were at the KPS headquarters, the various directorates and sections. We also covered the Prison Staff College. We looked at relevant support departments of the State Department of Correctional Services, mainly internal audit, supply chain management, finance and budget accounts, and HR and education. We sampled regional offices and we focused in Nairobi, Coast, Rift Valley, Eastern, Central, and Nyanza. And in that context, we were able to visit 32 prison stations, 12 stakeholders, including the judiciary, probation and aftercare services, and Kenya National Human Rights Commission. So these are key stakeholders to the Kenya Prison Service. So allow me to talk about some of the milestones, some of the weaknesses, and some of the loopholes that we noted. First, the regional presence of KPS is commendable. Yeah, they have establishment of 135 prisons, not to say that Kenyans are mainly prisoners, but at least they are able to find a mechanism to support this work. And this allows for issues of decongestion, visits, and even brand visibility of KPS among the community. We noted an open door policy in prison facilities and in improved human rights and better reintegration, because the prisons are open, people can walk in, families, various stakeholders, NGOs, that can interact with the inmates and even, provide a sense of belonging and dignity. We saw improved sanitation levels in most stations, especially water was readily available in most of the prison stations. There was establishment of paralegal sections, which was able to assist inmates in case reviews and appeals. So I think that was also commendable. There was introduction of family days. I think in the past, this never used to be the case, but it is now. And of course, it enhances community integration. So there are some of the critical milestones that we noted, that really need to be entrenched within the service. So in terms of the other findings, where loopholes and recommendations are, we had a total of 87 risks and weaknesses that have been identified across the service. In the area of finance, there are 20. We'll just give a snippets, a few highlights. In the core mandate, we noted 19. In human resources, we noted 15 issues. In supply chain, 14. In project management, 10. Legal framework and operating environment, 9. So we have given a short summary, so we'll pick a few in each of those areas just to give you a flavor of the findings. Let me start with the legal framework and the operating environment of the Kenya Prison Service. We noted that there were some inconsistencies in the legal and regulatory environment. For instance, the Prisons Act Cap 90 the Boston Act Cap 92 standing orders are not aligned with the Constitution of Kenya and international standards. For example, corporal punishment is found under Section 55, and that contravenes against Section 29 of the core Constitution of Kenya. So I think that is an area we can look at. Secondly, the subsidiary legislation on the industry and farms are not aligned with the PFM Act, Cap 412A. Non-provisions of the fund administration costs is one critical issue that we noted. So it's important to align that environment. So this portends certain risks. For instance, there is lack of clarity or conflict in the laws that make it difficult to hold individuals accountable for any misconduct. And the recommendations that we make is that we need to align the KPS legal framework with the constitutional and the international standards, and review the pre-fund funds regulations to align with the PFM Act. There were various policy and procedural gaps that we also noted. For instance, there was lack of policy, standard operating procedures, practice guidelines in most functional areas in KPS. This limits efficiency, accountability, and effectiveness in service quality assurance. Lack of partnership frameworks, opening room for discretion in the management of stakeholder engagements, especially handling donations. 2, there were issues of operational and data management challenges, fragmentation and manual inmate data management systems, hindering efficiency and data integrity. 3, we noted failure to establish corruption prevention frameworks. And this, for example, this creates an environment for corruption and unethical practices to occur. And we have made a raft of recommendations to support a change of policy or improve the operating environment, including develop and operationalize governance instruments, develop partnership policies, finalize digitization and automation of KPS processes, and integrate with other criminal justice systems for efficiency and transparency, and finally, develop and operationalize bribery and corruption prevention frameworks in line with the National Ethics and Anti-Corruption Policy and the Anti-Bribery Act, Cap 798. Then there was this issue of the earning scheme. Section 74(1) of the Prisons Act provides for the development of rules for payment of inmates for work done while in prison. We noted that the standing orders provide for earnings of 20 cents. I don't know whether 20 cents or 10 cents is still in circulation, but there we are. 20 cents per day for grade A inmates, 15 cents per day for grade B inmates, and 10 cents for grade C inmates. While they are very low, they have also not been operationalized. And prisoners are not paid this whenever they carry out work. This is a weakness that may lead to non-compliance with the Section 74 that I talked about. So the risk here is low morale of inmates, and it also undermines effective rehabilitation and reintegration, resulting to repeat offenders. As people, when they leave after some time and they really have nothing, sometimes it becomes very difficult to get back to the society. So we are recommending that we need to operationalize the earning scheme in line with the Chapter 68 of the Kenya Prison Standing Orders. We also want you to ensure that there are periodic reviews of the earning rates to reflect the prevailing socio-economic conditions of the country. Then there is this issue. Okay, I don't know. Maybe it is okay. Okay, we can pick it on either side, but I don't know why this specific one is a... Okay, it's the reflection. Sorry. We also agonized over this issue of designating an accounting officer to be responsible for Kenya Prison Service. What we noted is that, one, the Commissioner General of Prisons is mandated under Section 5 of the Prisons Act to administer the service, control, and supervision of all prisoners. But he lacks authority over key financial management areas. For example, budgeting, expenditure, procurement, reporting, etc. He is also not a designated accounting office. And I reflect this with the case of the National Youth Service. I think when we did a systems review there, that role was moved from the Ministry of Finance to the NYS. So CEO, we are requesting that you engage the PS and the relevant partners in this environment to see how best this can be handled. But there are risks that are involved because of that particular challenge. One, there's limited authority over financial oversight from the KPS side. This hinders effective accountability and compliance with public financial management regulations. So our recommendation here is that we consider to provide that authority to the Commissioner General. Core functions. Let me now move towards the core mandate of Kenya Prison Service. And one is the issue of containment of inmates. And one of the things we focused on was inmates fund management. We noted weak internal controls and financial accountability, failure to append. For example, when inmates are getting into prison, whatever money they have, they're supposed to hand over. And when they are discharged, they take it back. We noted that they did never appended their thumbprint or signature when they are handing over some of these monies or on cash registers during admission and discharge. And this compromises transparency, authenticity, and accountability. Secondly, we noted lack of standards, standard financial documentation of the management of those funds, use of non-standardized formal formats, and reporting transactions in loose counter books, weakens integrity of financial records, and hinders traceability and potential fraud, and even mismanagement of inmates' funds. So thirdly, we noted miscellaneous or unauthorized diversion of inmate funds to fund station operations. And this creates opportunity for financial misappropriation. So we are recommending that you implement biometric authentication for financial transactions. We are also saying that we need to develop and operationalize standard cash registers with the deposit and with the withdrawal processes intact. We are also saying please strengthen financial oversight and reporting mechanisms to prevent misallocation and diversion of funds. Then there was inmates' uniforms. That was another area we noted. We noted that one, there is inadequate inmate uniforms generally. Secondly, there was lack of proper records on the issuance of those uniforms. And the risk there was bribery and irregular use of uniform as a commodity of trade among inmates. So kama sina naweza kununua yako or lease yours on a temporary basis, and we think that is a challenge. And of course, there's the issue of misappropriation of funds. So our recommendation is that we need to enforce Chapter 67(1) of the Kenya Prison Service Standing Orders on issuance of uniforms and scales of issuance. Secondly, we need to develop and implement a policy on issuance of uniforms to improve accountability and tracking of use. On health matters, we noted that the infirmaries lack space, with some facilities storing expired drugs. There were challenges in shift registration for inmates, but I have noted because the OTP, you must have an OTP. An inmate does not have a phone. So when you try to do this, and we note that this is an area the Commissioner General has taken up, and there is some work going on in line with the recommendation that we have made. But we noted this, the risks were health risks, diversion of medical supplies, and increased healthcare costs. So there was need to implement tracking of medical supplies and engage with the relevant authorities to explore exemptions or alternative registration procedures for inmates, which I think is what is already happening as we speak. Rehabilitation programs was another area, and here we looked at capacity of the institutions that interact with the prison service and the service itself, and we noted insufficient formal training facilities, such as classrooms. I remember I was in one of the Boston stations in the western part of this country, and we noted that. There was lack of funding for materials and equipment, the engagement of unregistered teachers as trainers, non-alignment of vocational training programs with market trends. So in terms of reintegration, again, that poses its own challenges. And then there was lack of certification and quality assurance of the training programs that were being offered. So in terms of risks, this undermines effectiveness of rehabilitation programs, and we also noted insufficiency and misallocation of resources. So there are a number of recommendations, including the need to provide budgetary allocation to ensure dedicated funding, deploy only registered and qualified teachers, foster partnerships with the industry stakeholders to engage program relevance, and develop formal certification processes in collaboration with relevant accreditation bodies, and establish a mechanism for tracking graduates' employment and reintegration success. Farms and industries. There is a term there called mingling of funds for farms and industries. And this what means is no separation of accounts for each enterprise. Pesa ya farms and industries are put together. 2, there were delays in disbursement of funds and misalignment with planting seasons. I think I went to one farm where the planting was done at a time when the rains have actually disappeared. So, and there were a lot of issues that were related with that. You know, getting money to buy what is required. And then centralized procurement of inputs without consideration of station-specific needs. The loopholes or risks were the likelihood of misallocation or misappropriation, inefficiency due to late release of funds, and I think this is what was also affecting planting, and then inability to carry out reconciliation of relevant collected increases risks, and that leads to risk of misappropriation. So we propose that we separate the fund bank accounts, we synchronize the disbursement process, we procurement of farm inputs be based on station-specific needs, and of course, we need to institutionalize strict revenue reconciliation measures. And then finance and economic planning was the other area that we looked at, and here we focused on financial processes. Key financial functions as input management and preparations were done manually. And of course, there were weak internal controls in supplier payment processes. For example, issuance of purchase orders after the delivery of goods. Then, of course, the risk that it impedes efficiency and accuracy of financial processes, and of course, there's the issue of the loss of funds. So there is need to automate the financial processes in line with the Regulation 102 and 109 of the Public Financial Management National Government Regulation 2015, and enhance controls to ensure transparency and accountability. Creditor management, delayed supplier payments, accumulating pending bills. At least we were able to see the pending bills for the year 2022-2023, and it was standing at 6.83 billion at the time. And then the issue of non-adherence to first in, first out principle, leading to irregular processing of those payments. So risk again, loss of funds, favoritism may get in when there are so many on the queue. So we recommend that we institute mechanisms to enforce contractual obligations, to develop and operationalize interventions for a conclusive processing of pending bills, and of course, enforce FIFO. Internal audit. There was incomplete implementation of audit plans. There were delayed implementation of audit recommendations, and there was failure to audit crucial areas due to resource constraints. Risk, inefficiency leading to recurrent audit issues. So we are not able to achieve zero fault audit. Secondly, failure to address malpractices allowing corruption to thrive. And 3, non-adherence to financial regulations. This contravenes the law. So we have recommended that we ensure full implementation of audit plans, ensuring adherence to Regulation 172 of the PFM National Government Regulations, and of course prioritize high-risk areas and allocate sufficient funds for the audit function. Supply chain, procurement and disposal policy and approved plans. These are the areas we looked at, and we noted lack of a procurement and disposal policy and procedure manual. We noted most stations lacked approved procurement plans, leading to misuse of low-value procurement method. We also noted that procurement at above market prices, for instance, in Mombasa, remand prison, 50 kg bag of sugar costed 15,000 shillings. But just next door, in Shimo-Latewa, it was 8,000. So we really need to look at this. What are the questions of market surveys and all that? So the risk is inefficiency and fraud in the procurement process and loss of public funds. So we recommend that we develop and operationalize a procurement and disposal policy and a procedure manual, that we prepare and approve procurement plans for all stations and carry out market surveys. Secondly, in supply chain, the issue was publishing and publication of contract awards. Failure to publish and publicize the award as per the required PPDA Cap 412C. That was not done. So this undermines public trust, reduces competition, and compromises the integrity of the procurement process. So we are merely saying please adhere to Section 138 of the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Cap 412C. HR, failure to align staff establishment with the organizational structure. So there were overstaffing in some stations and understaffing in others. Then there were issues of irregular appointment, and I think even much more recently, this was a matter of concern in the public domain. Inadequate enforcement of HR policies, e.g., for example, cases of numerous absenteeism. People just don't come to work, and indiscipline among staff. So, Commissioner General, we are saying that this is something we need to look at, and the risk is that there is haphazard and unplanned staff placements resulting to understaffing in some areas. We are also saying that this leads to loss of funds from irregular appointments and payroll fraud and increases in unethical practices. So please align staff establishment with the organizational structure, review and update the skills inventory, and deploy staff appropriately. And finally, strengthen disciplinary mechanisms within the service. Weak payroll internal controls. This is another area we noted. There is a payroll padding, and here we noted discrepancy between pay and job grades. So if I'm an assistant director, by appointment, my salary becomes director. That is what is in the payroll, and that is unacceptable. It is not right. Just to explain it simply, that is what is in the payroll. At least the payroll that was given to us noted that. And then there are no payroll reconciliations. Risk is perpetuation and concealment of fraud and errors in the payroll resulting to loss of public funds. Recommendation, kindly strengthen internal controls, especially in payroll management. Have a comprehensive audit of the payroll. Recover irregularly earned funds and institute disciplinary measures. Undertake monthly payroll reconciliations in compliance with Regulation 121.3 of the PFM National Government Regulations 2015. In administration, the issues that we noted were poor infrastructure, and here there was lack of periodic maintenance, non-standardization of facilities, for example, perimeter walls and watchtowers. Risk is insecurity, high operational costs resulting to loss of funds. Recommendation, carry out periodic maintenance of facilities and develop a standardized plan for prison structures. 2 was the stalled projects. We noted that over 70% of projects were stalled. We were able to visit some of them, like in Manyani, there was the multipurpose hall, the dog unit at Shimolatewa, the kitchen in Embu prison, and Kibos sewer line, just to mention a few. Risk is cost overruns, potential misuse of funds, undermining the operational capacity of KPS. So let's fast track implementation and strengthen project oversight. Finally, is the issue of encroachment of prison land. We noted that there is lack of ownership documents on most of the prison lands, such as title deeds, failure to demarcate and fence, invasion by private developers. So the risks are theft of public funds through fraudulent claims, legal disputes from unclear land ownership and boundaries, loss of public land through potential collusion of private developers with corrupt officials, speculative grabbing of unfenced idle land. So we recommend a proper survey and demarcation to prevent encroachment, fencing to secure physical barriers to deter unauthorized access, and acquire title deeds to ensure proper documentation of established legal ownership to prevent fraudulent claims. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, on our part, we'll expect the KPS to develop an implementation plan within 3 months to address the identified gaps and risks, and that plan will form a basis for the Commission to monitor and track progress and continuously provide results on each and every of the 87 recommendations that we have made. Thank you very much.